Part 24. All Heaven's Unlimited Base. Author, Jingde Ren. Chapter 231. 230 Reaper vs Wesker. Facing Albert Wesker, Hank didn't speak at all. He hit his knees to distance himself, and at the same time took out a Desert Eagle pistol. At the same time as he pulled the trigger, Wesker was already in front of him in a flash, grabbing the pistol. Boom! Bullets shot into the sky. At the same time, Wesker shot backhand. Hank immediately grabbed Wesker's wrist, and the two fought. Hank's strength was obviously not as strong as Wesker, who had been injected with the ancestor virus and looked like a Superman. He was tripped by Wesker staggered. But he was very dexterous, holding the spring of the Wesker pistol with one hand and pulling out the magazine in one hand with the other. Almost at the same time, Wesker pointed the pistol between his eyebrows and pulled the trigger. There was a click sound, and Wesker realized that the pistol magazine was gone. Grabbing him in a daze, Hank kicked him hard on the knee, and at the same time raised his elbow and hit Wesker's cheek. Bang! Wesker just tilted his head, and then punched Hank flying. Before he could catch up and continue fighting, he saw a brick whizzing towards him. He smashed the brick with his fist, but immediately after that, he saw a flash of cold light, and a dagger pierced his throat. Wesker raised his hand in an instant reaction, and Hank's dagger suddenly tilted aside, leaving a scar on Wesker's face. Immediately following Hank's attack came like a torrential rain. Bang bang bang. Wesker was hit on the calf, abdomen, and chest several times, but he remained motionless, and a backhand punch sent Hank flying several meters away again. Seeing Hank fall to the ground in a panic, Wesker rushed to him and stepped on him in a blink of an eye. Unexpectedly, Hank's move was a trap. He suddenly adjusted his center of gravity and stood up again with an almost impossible movement, pointing the dagger directly at the center of Wesker's eyebrows. But at this time, Wesker's center of gravity was completely on his raised foot, and there was no time to adjust it. Boom! Hank's dagger stopped less than 1 centimeter from Wesker's eyebrows. I saw the dagger trembling slightly. It turned out that Wesker withdrew his hand abruptly with his heaven-defying physical fitness, and held Hank's dagger at a critical moment. The two kept wrestling, but the dagger was getting farther and farther away from Wesker's eyebrows. Suddenly, there was a light click, and Wesker's sunglasses split into two, which turned out to have been cut off just now. Wesker turned his head sideways, a hint of ferocity emerged from the corner of his mouth. Those eyes suddenly showed golden vertical pupils like a beast, and also emitted an ominous red light. After I wake up, you are the first human being who can hurt me, teacher. Wesker said with a smirk. He grabbed Hank's dagger with his backhand, broke his wrist a little bit, and the dagger began to move towards Hank. Hank's neck is getting closer. But you haven't improved at all compared to when you were training on Nuckford Island 12 years ago. Hank taunted, his voice buzzing under the cover of the gas mask, but he didn't get hurt by the dagger at all. To be stabbed by Wesker and panic. Oh. It looks like I need to do a graduation competition again. Wesker increased his strength with a grin. Suddenly, Hank kicked his feet hard. With both feet in the air, he grabbed Wesker's wrist and pulled it towards him. The direction of Wesker's force is also the same. His hands are suddenly empty, and the dagger is drawn forward in an instant. And Hank had already fallen to the ground, and at the same time, he used his whole body weight to pull Wesker down violently, and at the same time raised his feet and wrapped them around his neck and twisted them violently. Plop! Wesker was actually under pressure by Hank. Click! The ventilation pipe of Hank's gas mask was cut off by the dagger and fell down, and even a piece of flesh on Hank's chin was cut off, dripping with blood. Even if his movements were not in place just a little bit, what the dagger cut off was his throat. Wesker never thought that he would lose the battle with Hank. In his opinion, after merging with the ancestor virus, he should have become one of the most perfect human beings. Even if it was the loss to Alexia last time, It can only show that Alexia spent 15 years merging with the Veronica virus better. Originally, he had already dismissed Hank. Both his strength and speed far surpassed Hank, who was still in the category of ordinary people. However, the result now is that Hank overwhelmed him to the ground. This is a great shame. At this moment, out of the corner of his eye, he suddenly saw another person rushing towards him at high speed from the slanting stab, and with his eyesight, he naturally saw that this person's finger had already pulled the trigger. With a loud roar, his muscles swelled, and he broke free from Hank's restraint with one hand and lifted him up. Bang bang bang. A barrage of bullets was fired towards where his head had been, but now, those bullets landed in Hank's back, and he took a few bullets in his own arm. It was Victor who rushed over. When he fired the gun, he saw Hank activated the electromagnetic bulletproof device of the combat suit, forming an electromagnetic field outside the combat suit, and counteracting the kinetic energy on the metal bullet through repulsion. Fortunately, he was using a pistol, otherwise, with the power of the M4101 pulse rifle, even with the protection of the combat uniform, Hank would have been seriously injured. Victor changed the magazine in lightning, and when he was about to shoot again, Wesker yelled and threw Hank over. Victor quickly dropped the pistol, raised his hands to slow Hank's falling speed, then pulled out a Japanese sword with his backhand, and slashed at Wesker with a feint. Hank rolled to his feet and joined the battle group with a dagger in his hand. However, although Wesker is showing its prestige with one enemy and two, the armed men he brought have been defeated. Two Tic tanks ran rampant on the battlefield without any scruples, but these armed men did not have any firepower to pose the slightest threat to the tanks. One of the Tic tanks was bypassed by Wesker and used the AT-4 anti-tank rocket launcher to penetrate the rear armor, but the NE beta parasite driving the tank survived tenaciously. The fire inside the tank was quickly extinguished by the automatic fire extinguishing system. While repairing the wounds on his body, the parasite continued to drive the crumbling tank to continue fighting. I only saw the Tic tank, under the auxiliary control of Red Queen 00005, activate the mechanical claws digging in front and hit a collapsed concrete pillar. Squeak bang 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 bang. A terrible sound sounded, and this concrete pillar was directly crushed by the mechanical claws, even the steel bars inside were crushed. The three armed men hiding behind screamed and were caught by the mechanical claws, and they were smashed into a pile of minced meat in a few seconds. Now these desperate armed men can't even escape, because their retreat has been blocked by the bombed buildings of Beltway. Tap, tap, tap. Two of the A-60 helicopters started to take off and wanted to escape, but they had just ascended less than 200 meters, and suddenly two missiles flew out from the base. Boom. Boom. The two helicopters were instantly blown up into a ball of fire. Chunyuan and Beltway rushed to the remaining two helicopters with the Mistral missile launcher, and shouted sharply, "Stop the engine! Come down for me!" All Heavens Unlimited Base. Author, Jingde Ren. Chapter 232. 231 Snowstorm. The pilots of the remaining two A-60s obediently shut down their engines, opened the hatch and walked out, raising their hands above their heads. At this time, Hank suddenly said in the communication, "Wesker is here. Victor and I are not his opponents, come to support as soon as possible." Chunyuan's heart was shocked. It was Wesker who came? And what about the experimenter? Could it be that the experimenter sent Wesker over? He hurriedly said to Beltway, "Look at them." After speaking, he rushed out with a long stride, and at the same time stuffed a piece of tiberium crystal into his mouth, and the whole person rushed over like an arrow leaving the string. The battle inside the base was about to end, those militants had completely collapsed, and those who were still alive came out and surrendered one after another. Here they are fortunate that Chunyuan built the Red Queen 00005 in the Antarctica base, otherwise, if the NE beta parasites are allowed to play freely, the result will definitely be wiped out. Albert Wesker fought with Hank and Victor, and his speed was so fast that he could dodge bullets. Even Hank, who had the strongest melee combat ability in the wolf pack team except Chunyuan, was no match for him. After discovering that his fighting skills were far inferior to Hank's, Wesker simply adopted the method of exchanging injuries for injuries, and knocked Hank and the others away with one punch after another even though he was stabbed a few times. But at this moment, Wesker was extremely anxious. On the one hand, since Hank and Victor are here, the rest of the XU.S.S Delta squad must be too. And how terrible the U.S.S is, Wesker used to work in the intelligence department of Umbrella Corporation, so he is naturally very clear. He knew that his situation would be even more difficult if U.S.S members from other directions came to support him. And on the other hand even more dangerous. Now that there is an ambush at the base in Antarctica, what about Alexia? If there is another Alexia on the basis of U.S.S, then he will really die without a place to die. After seeing that the people around him had been completely defeated, Wesker's eyes froze, and he rushed over fiercely. Victor slashed with a Tadeo, but Wesker raised his arm to block the knife, blood spattered all over the place. But he immediately tightened his cast iron muscles, clamped Victor's sword tightly, and at the same time kicked Victor away with a sway of his body, and then punched Hank hard. Hank reacted immediately and raised his hands to block the punch, but he was also beaten back again and again by the huge force. But at this time, Wesker had already turned around and ran away. Wesker! Leave it to me! Suddenly there was a shout from behind, and Chunyuan rushed over like lightning, and before he finished speaking, gunshots rang out, da-da-da-da-da. The muzzle of the M41A1 pulse rifle flashed lightning, and a large number of 10mm caseless bullets shot out like lightning. Wesker's speed suddenly increased, even leaving an afterimage on the spot. Almost at the speed of teleportation, he flashed to the other side, turned his head and threw 2 grenades at the same time, and the Desert Eagle pistol in his hand fired one after another. Boom! Boom! 2 violent explosions caused the surrounding snow to splash everywhere. Chunyuan dodged the exploding shrapnel with a beautiful roll forward, and followed closely behind without losing any speed. The two chased and fled, and their speed was far faster than ordinary people, and they quickly left the battlefield far behind. Over there, Victor and Hank looked at each other, nodded, and then ran towards the garage behind in unison. A moment later, 2 snowmobiles roared and rushed straight out of the garage. In front, Chunyuan and Wesker were still chasing and shooting. Although Wesker moved at an unimaginably fast speed, it was easier for Chunyuan to shoot from behind, so he had to make irregular evasive movements, and he was still unable to get rid of Chunyuan. While running, Wesker suddenly turned his head and looked forward. There were several cars parked there, and they were all modified off-road vehicles with wheels replaced with snow tracks. It should be used by former Umbrella employees at the Antarctica base. Seeing this scene, Chunyuan secretly thought something was wrong, so he quickly picked up his gun and shot wildly. Da-da-da-da. The dense bullets immediately smashed one of the vehicles into a sieve, the fuel tank was also pierced, and flames began to emerge from it. However, Wesker jumped directly into another car, the car key was in the car, he directly started the car and jumped out. Chunyuan hurriedly ran towards another intact car, but at this moment he suddenly turned his head and saw 2 grenades dropped on the ground. His pupils constricted for an instant, and he rushed to the side. Boom! The grenade exploded immediately. The violent explosion immediately detonated the car that was smashed by Chunyuan just now. Boom! Boom! Another burst of sacrificial explosions set off. Grass NMLGB. Chunyuan got up while cursing, but heard the roar of an engine behind him. Immediately afterwards, a deep roar sounded, "Come up!" Almost at the same time, 2 snowmobiles rushed out through the flames and smoke. It's Hank and Victor. Seeing Victor stretch out a hand towards him, Chunyuan grabbed it without hesitation and jumped onto the back seat of the snowmobile. Hum. Hum. Hank and Victor twisted the accelerator of the motorcycle to the bottom, and the snowmobile made a strange sound, kicking up a large pile of snow and driving forward at a high speed. Chun Yuyan threw the magazine with more than 20 bullets left into his personal space, took out a new magazine to replace it, and stood up from the back seat of the motorcycle. The icy wind was blowing towards his face, but it was completely blocked by the gas mask. He looked at Hank, who was next to him with an incomplete gas mask, took out a new one from his personal space, and patted Victor on the shoulder. Victor understood, leaned the motorcycle over. Chun Yuyan handed the gas mask to Hank, he took it, and nodded to Chun Yuyan. Getting ready for battle, the two motorcycles accelerated again. Looking at the speedometer, they had reached 120 kilometers per hour. That's pretty much the limit for the snowmobile. They chased along the ruts all the way, and soon saw a black shadow ahead. It's the snowmobile driven by Wesker. Da-da-da-da. Chun Yuyan stood up and took a gun to shoot, but it was difficult to shoot accurately in this situation, and the bullets splashed waves of snow and dust on the ground. Wesker in front also spotted the pursuers immediately. He poked his head out of the cab and fired shots at the back. The speed of the two sides was soaring, and they kept shooting at each other while driving. Hank and Victor also took time to take out their pistols and shoot. Although this area is full of snow fields, the terrain is very rugged. There are protruding ice rocks and scattered ice lakes everywhere. The vehicles are constantly bumping up and down, and the shooting from both sides has no results. The scenery on both sides flew back quickly, almost dizzying, and Chun Yuyan changed another magazine. I only heard Victor say in the communication, "I'm driving over the icy lake ahead. If I'm lucky and don't fall, that section will be relatively flat. Come on," Chun Yuyan said, pulling the bolt of the gun violently. Victor turned sharply and drove towards the icy lake ahead at high speed. Chun Yuyan also raised his gun to aim. However, at this moment, a sudden change occurred, and suddenly there was a roar of an engine from the sky. It was another helicopter. Wesker has left behind. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. All Heaven's Unlimited Base. Author, Jingde Ren. Chapter 233. 232 Love Bazooka. The helicopter plunged down almost in a dive posture, apparently to meet Wesker. Forget about the helicopter. Get rid of Wesker first. Chun Yuyan yelled, and almost at the same time, Victor had already driven a snowmobile into the frozen lake. The sled in front of the snowmobile scooped up countless ice slags on the frozen lake. The weight of the motorcycle and two adults immediately cracked the ice surface and began to spread continuously. But on smooth ice, the driving of the snowmobile also immediately stabilized. Chun Yuyan took a deep breath, held the handle of the gun tightly, put the butt of the gun against his shoulder, and made his eyes line up with the crosshairs on the gun, then aimed at the snowmobile running wildly in front, and pulled the trigger. Da-da-da-da-da-da. A dazzling electric light was emitted from the muzzle, and the 10mm caseless bullet was instantly accelerated and rotated by the built-in electromagnetic coil around the barrel, and then fired at a speed of more than 2,000 meters per second. More than a dozen bullets immediately hit the snowmobile in front of it that kept zigzagging. There were more than a dozen bullet holes in the back of the car. Judging from the position of the bullet hole, Wesker must have been shot. At this time, the speed of the snowmobile also slowed down. Rush up. Kill him. Chun Yuyan said loudly in the communication. Before coming to this world, Lin Huo specifically told him that if there is a chance, Albert Wesker and Oswell E. Spencer must be killed directly, don't give them any chance. Because they have no possibility of cooperation, extremely evil people with extremely distorted personalities. For them, there are only two kinds of people who can be used as cannon fodder and useless waste. Even if you reach an agreement with them today, they will sell you without hesitation the next day. Da-da-da. Da-da-da. Chen Yuyan kept firing, and several more bullets hit the snow-covered vehicle body. It seemed that one bullet penetrated the fuel tank, and flames began to spray out from the bullet holes. This state will not explode, but if a backfire occurs and the flames enter the fuel tank, then this snowmobile will instantly turn into a blockbuster. However, at this moment, Chen Yuyan suddenly felt the snowmobile sink suddenly. He almost fell off the vehicle, and all the bullets he fired hit the ground. "Be careful! The ice is cracked!" Victor yelled, and turned the accelerator to the bottom, and the motorcycle slid crazily on the broken ice. However, the motorcycle is still barely moving forward on the ice with the help of inertia and the buoyancy of the sled, but it is still sinking gradually. At this time, Hank rushed up driving another snowmobile. He approached the snowmobile driven by Wesker, took out his pistol and fired several shots at the cab. Wesker was obviously injured, and he didn't bother to shoot back. He just slammed the steering wheel, and the huge body of the snowmobile slammed into Hank's snowmobile. Hank had no choice but to hold the handle with both hands and dodge to the side, and the distance between the two sides was further widened. At this time, the flames spewing out of Wesker's snowmobile fuel tank became bigger and bigger, and even began to spread to other places. During the high-speed hurricane, the flames were blown back by the strong wind, and the flames were stretched long with thick smoke. "Hold on firmly!" Victor shouted suddenly, and Chen Yuyan immediately hugged his waist. All I saw was that Victor turned the snowmobile sharply and slammed into a protruding ice block on the surface of the frozen lake. Boom! At this speed, the sled rushed onto the ice. Bang! The whole motorcycle flew sideways at once. In mid-air, Chen Yuyan's feet were hanging in the air. He could only hug Victor tightly, thinking that it would be fine if the four-eyed girl drove the car. The motorcycle flew several meters high, crossed a distance of more than 20 meters in an instant, crossed the icy lake, and landed heavily on the solid ground. Chen Yuyan quickly adjusted his sitting posture, stood up again and prepared to continue firing at Wesker. Looking up, the helicopter is already very close. It is a Bell 427 twin-engine helicopter, and it is also the most advanced multi-purpose helicopter in Resident Evil. The helicopter hatch opened, and a beautiful red figure appeared at the hatch. She is a short-haired oriental beauty in a red top and black tights. And in her hand, she held an M249 squad machine gun. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Flames spewed out from the muzzle of the machine gun, and countless bullets fell from the sky. Hank and Victor hurriedly controlled the snowmobile to dodge. Because the turn was too sharp, Chen Yuyan had to sit down again and hugged Victor's waist again. After pushing back two snowmobiles, the woman kept firing while the helicopter lowered its altitude. After she empties the magazine, she pulls out a grapple gun, and with a bang, a sharp grapple is fired, hooking precisely onto the hood of Wesker's snowmobile. Wesker found something to jam the accelerator, then smashed the front windshield of the snowmobile with his fist, grabbed the grapple and removed it. The woman in the helicopter attaches the grapple gun to the helicopter and presses a button to start retracting the cable. But at this time, Wesker was unlucky. The out-of-control snowmobile slammed into an ice rock. The fuel tank that was already on fire exploded when it was squeezed. The huge explosion impact hit Wesker, who was suspended in the air like a leaf falling in the wind, and his body was also covered with burning gasoline splashing everywhere, and his whole body was burned into a pillar of fire. At this time, the snowmobiles driven by Hank and Victor also regained their momentum and caught up. Chen Yuyan shouted, "Shoot the plane down." Hank and Victor immediately slowed down, took out the M4101 pulse rifle they were carrying from their backs, and aimed at the helicopter with a dense rain of bullets and fired it. The tail of the Bell 427 was hit by several bullets immediately, and black smoke rose. And at this moment, the woman on the helicopter took out a big guy from the side. Chen Yuyan's pupils constricted immediately when he saw this thing, It turned out to be an M202 bazooka. 4 pipes. The woman aimed briefly, switched to continuous shooting mode, whoosh. She fired all 4 rockets at once. Humming Hummer, run. Chen Yuyan yelled. Hank and Victor had already reacted, swung the handle suddenly, and the snowmobile turned sharply to the side. Meanwhile, boom. 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 A violent explosion swept across immediately, and the 3 of them simultaneously turned on the bulletproof mode of their combat uniforms to resist the shrapnel flying around. Before the smoke from the explosion cleared, Chen Yuyan raised his gun and fired again. He held down the trigger and fired all the remaining bullets in the magazine in seconds. Then put on a new magazine and light again. At this time, the helicopter had already wobbled away, and there was still a burning figure hanging below it, which was basically charred. The 2 snowmobiles flicked to a stop. Chen Yuyan looked at the helicopter, threw the M4101 pulse rifle on the ground, and cursed, Ada Wang. Normally speaking, Wesker is already dead. Victor said, looking at the charred human figure that was approaching the helicopter cabin little by little as the steel cable was recovered. But he's not human anymore. Hanka said flatly, and he glanced at Chen Yuyan as he spoke. He's not dead. Chen Yuyan said in a deep voice, the system prompt did not come, otherwise, killing this important plot character would definitely reward him with a lot of points. He waved his hand and said, go back and interrogate those captives. Also, Hank, what did you mean by looking at me just now? Nothing interesting. You obviously want to say that I'm not human either. Chen Yuyan scolded with a smile. I think this should be a compliment for you. I mean the same thing as Hank. Victor, shut up. Get out of here and ride Hank's motorcycle, I'll drive this one myself. I'll give you a chance to hug his waist. All Heaven's Unlimited Base. Author, Jingde Ren. Chapter 234. 233, Desperate. Wesker. Where are you? Come help me. A female voice came from the communicator, obviously she was in extreme panic right now. Wesker. I'm being targeted. Help me. Answer me. If I get caught, many secrets of the company will be exposed. Suddenly a scorched hand reached over to pick up the communicator, crushed it, opened the helicopter hatch and dropped it from the sky. Aren't you going to save her? A red-dressed short-haired oriental beauty sitting across from her asked. She was Ada Wang who gave Chen Yuyan 4 love rockets before. Her eyes followed the scorched hand, and the person sitting opposite her was a man whose whole body was scorched. The carbonized skin on his body was broken and cracked, revealing the bright red flesh underneath, and there was still blood ooze. The clothes on his body were scorched and melted, sticking tightly to his skin. His face was also completely unrecognizable, his lips and eyelids were burned, and his eyeballs and gums were directly exposed, looking extremely hideous and terrifying. And even so, his pair of bloodshot eyeballs still had beast-like vertical pupils, emitting an ominous red light. If someone said that Albert Wesker would end up in such a situation an hour ago, no one who knew him would believe it, including Ada Wang. Tomoko Takara, she's just a smart idiot. Even the top management of H.C.F are also idiots. Wesker's vocal cords were also scorched, and now his voice is extremely unpleasant, and there is still some air in his throat. The other party set this trap, obviously it was expected that we would come in advance. And Tomoko Gaoliang thought that the return of the carbine was a sure thing. She caused me to be like this, and she still has the face to ask me to save her. Ada Wang bowed his head in a very submissive manner, and stopped talking. But Wesker took out another communicator and connected it and said, I am Wesker. The operation failed, we were ambushed, maybe the information from Alexia to the Caucasus was a trap. No, I did not saw her, but the U.S. guys are there, maybe they're back in Umbrella again. Is it Raccoon City? Okay, I'll take over Tomoko Takara's job, but I want double the price. The Caucasus will be discussed later. Now we don't have the strength to storm there, and maybe there are traps. After finishing speaking, he smashed the communicator again in a very prodigal manner, and threw it out of the hatch. Then said to Ada Wong, "Let's go to Raccoon City." "Are you okay in your current state?" Ada Wong asked. "There's nothing wrong with it?" Wesker opened a metal box, which contained a syringe gun filled with a light red potion. He picked up the injection gun and stabbed it directly at his heart. Almost at the same time when the potion entered his body, he let out a painful howl, "Ah!" His body began to squirm violently, the scorched skin cracked open, falling off, dripping with blood. Ugh! Amidst the terrifying animal howl, the helicopter flew towards the distance. Chile's southernmost port city, Punta Arenas. A beautiful woman in public clothes about 30 years old is running wildly on the street, her face is full of horror. Originally, she was still wearing high heels, but now she had lost her shoes in order to escape for her life. She ran barefoot, and the stockings on her feet were already worn out, and even many places on her feet were scratched without realizing it. This person is another experimenter, Tomoko Gaoliang. She used the content of the Wesker project she knew through the plot to make a deal with Albert Wesker and let him help her occupy the Antarctica base. Then she can go in and get the equipment that can be called the world's #1 artifact in Resident Evil, the mitochondrial emitter. With this weapon, almost all B.O.Ws based on T-virus and T-Veronica virus are no longer a threat to her, and this will also become her biggest bargaining chip. But she never imagined that Wesker failed. Not only did he fail, but he was also targeted. This can only illustrate one possibility: the other party has long known that they will return to the base in Antarctica, and has been monitoring the nearby routes. Because if you want to go to Alexander Island, where the Umbrella Company's Antarctica base is located, the only route is to pass through South Georgia Island, then cross the South Shetland Islands, enter the Bellingshausen Sea, and land on the island. And if you want to go to South Georgia Island, there are not many ports to choose from. The two closest ones are the Falkland Islands where Wesker departed, and the other is Punta Arenas, Chile, where she is located. This is a trap. This is a trap. Tomoko Gaoliang said to herself while running, the experimenter, this is the thinking mode of the experimenter. Could it be that they knew my whereabouts long ago and set the trap on purpose? Which? Nguyen or Wolman Schindler? While running, she looked back, although she couldn't see anyone, but the feeling of being watched was still lingering. This made her even more terrified, because she knew that compared with those who followed her, she had no possibility of resisting at all. In fact, she doesn't have any special abilities. At most, she has undergone 3 physical enhancements, which makes her physical strength much stronger than normal people. She really relied on her knowledge to survive in the world of Resident Evil. Since she was a child, her IQ has been outstanding, and her grades have always been among the best. Later, she directly entered Waseda University in Japan to graduate, and then went to the United States to study finance, management, and marketing at the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania, and graduated with honors. She then joined the DuPont Consortium and rose all the way to the position of regional manager. Unlike those experimenters who hoarded food and weapons immediately after entering the world of Resident Evil, the first thing she looked for was Sanley & Company. Taking advantage of her familiarity with the plot, she quickly found the Travis Trading Group behind the Sanley & Company on Wall Street. In addition, she was engaged in the management work of the chemical industry in the DuPont Consortium. She easily passed the interview and became a member of the Sanley & Company. A member of. At the same time, Nguyen was still being trained to death by Hank on Nuckford Island, while Tomoko Gaoliang was already flourishing in the sales department of Sanley & Company. She made full use of the 3 months between traveling to the world of Resident Evil in June and the outbreak of the Raccoon City incident at the end of September, so that she could get more resources from the company. Then, as expected, because of the ubiquitous influence of the system, all the experimenters who crossed over, no matter how they ran, would be gathered into several storm centers in the world of Resident Evil by various events: Raccoon City, 11 That Island, Nuckford Island, etc. The Sanlian Company also sent Gao Liang's Heize to work in Raccoon City. In fact, it also asked her to secretly collect information on the Umbrella Company. She survived Raccoon City after a near death, and she even picked up a tyrant's hand. This incident made the company look at her with admiration, and her status in the company skyrocketed. That's why she chose to bind the world of Resident Evil without hesitation, because she believed that she could do more. We have reached this point now. I must not die here. Tomoko Liang pressed the wireless communicator in his ear and called, Wesker. Wesker. Kuso. She pulled out the earphones and threw them on the ground, then quickly dodged into the alley next to her. Thanks for the 100 book coins rewarded by the gangster Chi-Chi. All Heavens Unlimited Base. Author, Jingde Ren. Chapter 235. 234 Desire to Survive. Yo. Caught it? Chunyuan was driving a snowmobile towards the base in Antarctica. When he heard the ghost's communication, he slammed on the brakes and stopped. Beside him, Hank was riding another snowmobile, ignoring him at all, but just continued to drive forward unhurriedly, passing Chunyuan and driving far away. Victor sits in the back seat with his arms around Hank's small, big waist. Chunyuan looked at the two people who were boundless in love, and continued to ask in the communication, who is the other party? Male or female? Female, East Asian race. The ghost replied. That's Tomoko Gao Liang. Just now Looper asked from the prisoner that Sanlian Company was the one who launched the attack. Be careful. But if you have a chance, capture her alive. Chunyuan said. Good. Chunyuan hung up the communication and let out a long sigh of relief. It can be said that he invested a lot in this ambush operation, building Red Queen 00005, 2 Tick tanks, 5 NE Beta Parasite cultivation tanks, and 8 Mistral air defense missiles. It cost him 2,000 points in total. Looking at his remaining 3,150 points, he felt distressed. And the most distressing thing is that a trap was set up at such a high price, and in the end, Wesker didn't come. Forget about Wesker, he was rescued by Ada Wong. That's not counting, I even ate a love bazooka. Oh no, it's 4. But fortunately, the ghosts tracking all the way finally caught the tail of the other experimenter. If Gao Liang's Heize can be dealt with, then the points he spent this time will be completely worth it. Because the Sanlian Company raided the base in Antarctica this time, the whole operation was actually very well planned, and the armed forces sent were also very reasonable. But because of the unique geographical environment of Antarctica, their operation has only one flaw that is not considered a flaw. The starting point of the operation can only be the British Falkland Islands or Punta Arenas in Chile. Monitoring these two small ports is not a problem at all for the Gro Ghosts. Because most of the ships going to Antarctica are scientific research ships, the information is generally open and transparent, so the Sanlian Company ships that hide their information are as conspicuous to the ghosts as the darkness under the lights. At this time, on the streets of Punta Arenas, Tomoko Gao Liang has gradually stepped into a desperate situation. No matter how she escaped, the other party was always with her like a shadow, and what was even more frightening was that the other party was obviously very good at stalking. Until now she didn't know what kind of person was following her. Gao Liang's Heize shuttled in the alley with many turns and turns. Behind her, the vague footsteps sounded continuously, as if the death god was approaching. She suddenly wanted to understand one thing: the other party was chasing her so unhurriedly, Could it be that she wanted her to run to such a sparsely populated alley by herself so that it would be easier to deal with it? Thinking of this, she felt as if a bucket of ice water was poured from head to toe. Boom! Tomoko Gaoliang slammed open the wooden door of a nearby house and got in. She was exhausted, and she could only consume her energy if she continued to escape. Gaoliang's hiza covered her mouth, her chest was heaving violently, and she tried her best to keep her panting sound from coming out. This terrifying feeling was even scarier than the days she spent in Raccoon City. The footsteps gradually approached, and then stopped at the door. Tomoko Gaoliang's heart almost jumped out of her chest, she trembled all over, and slowly sat down against the wall. "Stop running. So, are you ready to die?" A gloomy voice came from outside the door. "Death." Tomoko Gaoliang's body trembled even more, because of the extreme fear, she couldn't even move. As soon as she heard the word death, a strong desire to survive suddenly burst into her eyes, and she screamed with all her strength, "I don't want to die. I surrender. I surrender. I only need dead people, not surrender." There was a click outside the door, the sound of pulling the bolt. "If you die here, everything will disappear, from the top student in childhood, to the top student of Waseda University, to the high spirits of Wharton Business School, and the rising sky of the DuPont Consortium. And after coming to this place, all the things I faced in the world of Resident Evil, everything is gone. One word. Give me a chance to say a word." Tomoko Gaoliang yelled, "Are you that person? Are you? Isn't it? Please listen to me and say a word. Just a word." The door was opened, and a tall and thin figure walked in. Because of the backlight, Tomoko Gaoliang couldn't see his appearance clearly. But then, her hair was grabbed, and amidst her screams, she was dragged out and thrown on the ground. "One word, say it." Just after the ghost finished speaking, he shot Takako Tomoko in the knee. "Wow. I work for Sanlian, I don't have special abilities, but I graduated from Wharton. It hurts. Help me, help me." Tomoko Gaoliang clutching his injured knee and screaming loudly, he answered in a crying voice. "Correct answer, then come with me." The ghost said sullenly, continued to grab her by the hair, and dragged her out. "So, you are from Sanlian Company?" Chan Yuyan looked at Tomoko Gaoliang lying on the hospital bed, and asked calmly. He looked at her and found that she was a woman in her early 30s, wearing a pair of gold-rimmed glasses, with a tall figure, well-maintained skin, and a beauty mole on the corner of her mouth. Although she is also very beautiful and graceful, but the seriousness and meanness of her face makes people often ignore her appearance. This is completely different from Alexia's noble demeanor, which makes people feel ashamed after seeing her, and keeps a distance involuntarily. Yes, when I first came to this world, I found a way to join Sanlian. Because, Tomoko Takara was dejected. She glanced at Looper and the others standing around, and said somewhat cryptically, "Because Umbrella Company obviously it's already getting darker." "Then what?" "Sanlian Company should be a member of H.C.F. My foundation there is still very shallow, and I can't get in touch with two core things. But before this operation, in a secret meeting, 5 mysterious people suspected of being high-level the released task." Tomoko Gaoliang simply said all the things in the previous meeting. Wesker, Jack Norman, Chan Yuyan pondered, there is no doubt that Jack Norman wants to attack the Atlantic Research Institute, but it is just to die. Raccoon City can absorb nuclear radiation, what the hell? Wait a minute. He suddenly thought of Holman Baker, the silver experimenter who licked his blood before. He was infected by tiberium and turned into a mutated creature, and if he was killed by a nuclear bomb, the tiberium mine on him would also spread. He glanced at Gaoliang's Heise again, and asked lightly, "So what are you going to do?" "I think I should kill you and reduce the cost of returning to this world to 200 points a day." Please let me join you. Please. Gao Liangzi begged loudly, I am willing to give up my home world, go to your world, and become your vassal. Don't kill me, please. Thank you for the 1000 starting point coins rewarded by the Star Sea Rangers. Thank you Tees fans for the reward of 100 starting coins. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. All Heavens Unlimited Base. Author, Jingde Ren. Chapter 236. Chapter 236. Supercar Sales System. This kind of book based on reality is very powerful. The author also dabbles deeply in car sales, and after reading it, he really gains knowledge. The following is an introduction. It introduces car sales and writes about various models. Joint venture cars, imported cars, and domestic cars have advantages and common problems. Car dealers collect and sell cars, car condition appraisal, industry insider. Deceptive tricks, unspoken rules of the industry, maintenance, car modification, etc. All Heavens Unlimited Base. Author, Jingde Ren. Chapter 237. 235 New Subordinate. Give up your home world, to become my vassal? Is there such a rule? Chen Yuyan pondered for a while, and asked in his mind, System, explain. Abandoning the home world is a way for experimenters from different worlds to team up. Experimenters can give up their home world, but they must find a new home world within 7 days. If they cannot find it, all data will be erased by the system. When the experimenters form a team, this method must be adopted to ensure that the home world of each team experimenter is the same tip. The team formation function will be enabled after the silver group. Then I'm still in the bronze group and can't form a team, right? Then what should I do? Chen Yuyan asked. You can sign an agreement with the other experimenter. You promise to accept her into your team after being promoted to the silver group, and she promises to join your team. This kind of agreement is called vassalage. After that, you can bring her back to your own home world. That's fine, let's sign an agreement. Chen Yuyan said. Signing the agreement requires both parties to pay 500 points each. The system said. 500 points. This is a huge sum of money. Chen Yuyan turned his head and began to look at Tomoko Gaoliang again. Well, she has good bumps, her figure is quite predictable, and although her expression is fierce, she also looks good. No, not right. What should be concerned is her abilities, not her body. So he asked, you said you graduated from Wharton Business School? Chen Yuyan had heard of this world's most prestigious business school. Tomoko Gaoliang quickly nodded and said, yes. 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 After I graduated from Waseda University, I studied at Wharton Business School. After that, I entered the DuPont Consortium and was responsible for the marketing management of the chemical industry. After I came to this world, I joined Sanley & Company, became the Deputy General Manager of the Asia-Pacific region in half a year. She looked at the wolf pack team standing next to her again, and said, you are the U.S.S. I know you. I know you. I don't have any special abilities, but I am very good at business management. I can be your logistics, would be the best addition. Chen Yuyan touched his chin. To be honest, he was a little tempted. In the world of Command and Conquer, although Genyu is very good, he is not an experimenter after all, and there are many things that he can't explain to him, and he can't understand. Although Lin Huo has a good IQ, he is a mage after all, and it seems that he has developed Iron Hammer Town just like that. In the world of Resident Evil, Tomoko Gaoliang can occupy a place in Sanley & Company by virtue of her management ability, which shows that her ability is also very good. Coupled with her internal understanding of Sanley & Company, she will definitely be able to flex her muscles in the further development of his A group. And by the looks of her, isn't she just a standard secretary? What did Mr. Treeman say? It's okay for the secretary to do something, ahem. Chen Yuyan coughed a few times and said, I can spare your life, but, Beltway. Hearing this, Beltway came over with a smile, took out an anklet and handed it to Chen Yuyan. I've prepared it a long time ago. This thing is worn on her foot, and you can detonate it at any time. It contains C4 explosives, and it is also mixed with T-virus. Once detonated, she will become a lame zombie in a few seconds. Ha 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 ha. Chen Yuyan shook his ankles in front of Tomoko Gaoliang and said, how about it? Put this on and we can sign an agreement. Do it yourself. After speaking, he handed the handcuffs to Tomoko Gaoliang. The latter didn't dare to hesitate too much, took the handcuffs and put them on his feet, and then closed his eyes. It should be communicating with the system. Then, Chen Yuyan also heard the system prompt. Experimenter, Tomoko Takara requested to sign an agreement. Tomoko Gaoliang voluntarily gave up her original home world Gotham City, and promised to join the team of experimenter Chen Yuyan, and at the same time changed her home world to Command and Conquer. Do you accept it? Tip: once the agreement is accepted, 500 points will be deducted. Wait a moment. This woman's home world is Gotham City? Isn't that the one from Batman? Oh, no, if it's a Gotham City episode, then there is no Batman, and that world was a Godfather-like world where gangsters were rampant. Chen Yuyan thought in his heart. If we continue to develop in that world, when the batch of superheroes like Batman grow up, it should be another world with unlimited potential. Unfortunately, we can only give up now. What do you do in Gotham City? Chen Yuyan asked. Laundering money for Falcone, Tomoko Takara replied. Okay, Chen Yuyan rubbed his forehead. He found that according to Wei Guangzhen's standard, there are not many good people in his own power. Murphy's, the boss of Under the Gun 4, U.S.S, the villain of Operation Raccoon City, Yi, the former super weapon killer. Now there is another gangster who launders money. System, I accept the proposal. Chen Yuyan said in his mind. Receive. 500 points have been deducted, now you have 2,650 points remaining. Reminder, the experimenter Tomoko Gaoliang has given up her home world Gotham City, and she will also unbind with the world of Resident Evil, and can only enter again unless she joins your team. You can now return experimenter Tomoko Kora to the world of Command \U0026 Conquer at any time, within 24 hours. Reminder, Tomoko Gaoliang unbinds the world of Resident Evil, and now the cost of traveling to the world of Resident Evil is reduced to 200 points per day. This message is broadcast to all experimenters bound to the Resident Evil world. Experimenter Chen Yuyan, you have expelled the experimenter Gaoliang's Heizi who bound the world of Resident Evil. Her power rating in this world is level 1, village level, and you will get 8,000 bonus points. There are 10,650 points left in the current test. 8,000 points reward. Chen Yuyan was shocked. There are so many. The points that had already bottomed out suddenly became tens of thousands again. However, looking back, when Jean Genbo and Calvin Martins were killed earlier, each was rewarded with 3,000 points. However, the two of them are in a group, which means that their forces have provided a total of 6,000 points. And the faction of the two of them doesn't even have a rating, so naturally there won't be any extra rewards. Considering that although Tomoko Gaoliang is only a senior part-time employee of the Sanlian Company, she can already participate in highly confidential meetings and can control Albert Wesker, so it should be no problem to give her a rural level. Calculated in this way, the reward of 8,000 points is very reasonable. The last experimenter, Wolman Schindler. Do you have any information about him? Chen Yuyan asked again. Not at all. He has very little activity in this world, and he has no idea what he is doing. I also mobilized some forces from the Sanlian Company to investigate this name, but found nothing. In fact, I also investigated you, but I did not. Arrived. Tomoko Kora said. It would be a ghost if it could be found. Lao Tzu's information in this world has long since ceased to be called Chanyuyan, Chanyuyan said in his heart. After coming out of Raccoon City, the condition for him to hand over Umbrella's criminal evidence to the captain of Echo 6, Dai, was to give him and the Wolf Pack team new identities, and he did. So his current identity in this world is a Chinese, and his name is Stephen Zhou. Of course, Chanyuyan never thought of really using this name. As long as there is action, there will be traces, which is absolutely unavoidable. The ghost who has been engaged in intelligence work all year round said, if this person hides deeply, then it can only show one thing: he is also didn't do anything. Or what he did involved very few people. Chanyuyan thought deeply. All Heavens Unlimited Base. Author, Jingde Ren. Chapter 238. 236, Behind the Scenes. If this Wollman Schindler does nothing, why does he think he can defeat us? Chanyuyan frowned and pondered. The ghost said coldly, there are two possibilities. First, he thinks it is enough for him to do nothing. Second, he has done something, but the impact of this kind of thing is not great, and we have no way to detect it. In my opinion, for those who can hide until now, this thought is unlikely to be the first possibility. It doesn't have much influence, but it is enough to give him enough ability to defeat us. And if I remember correctly, among the five of us, Schindler is the one who moves the least. Chanyuyan said. Actually, I have been speculating that he may have reached an agreement with some hidden force. Tomoko Gaoliang said. Based on your understanding, what kind of forces are there? Chanyuyan asked. First of all, I can rule out Sanli and Company, and secondly, H.C.F is also unlikely. If this is the case, then there are not many choices for him. Tomoko Gaoliang replied, now there are organizations that already exist and have considerable strength. Just a few. For example, Shinya Pharmaceuticals. This is what I doubt the most right now. Are you so sure about H.C.F? Chanyuyan asked. To him, H.C.F is a mysterious organization hidden under the black mist, and there is no trace to be found. Tomoko Gaoliang also seemed to realize that now is the time to show her value. She stroked her messy hair at the temples, straightened her crooked gold-rimmed glasses, and said, actually, before I came to this world, I didn't know HCF. What is it? But after I joined the Sanli and Company, I can actually infer a lot from the drama, information I knew before. Go on. In the secret meeting I attended, there were 5 high-level people involved. These 5 people should be the main high-level people at the current stage of HCF. Although they hide their appearance and use voice changers, I can at least know the identity of 3 of them. A gleam flashed in the corner of Tomoko Gaoliang's eyes. The person sitting on the left should be the person in charge of the overall operation. Among the organizations closely related to H.C.F, the one that has taken the most action recently is the FBC. The troops we attacked the base in Antarctica this time are the Special Operations Forces sent by the FBC. Then he is almost certainly the director of the FBC, Morgan Lansdell. People from the FBC? No wonder these soldiers are fully equipped with American equipment. Rupier said. The person on the right should be the director of the African branch of Sanli and Company, Exeligenai. Although she tried her best to conceal it, I can still distinguish the details of her small movements and language. She is still too young now. Up. In addition, at the beginning of the meeting, Jack Norman also asked if Mr. Travis was there, so I speculate that one of the remaining 2 people, the second from the right or the second from the left, is the top director of the Triple Company, the current head of the Travis family. In addition, from the perspective of seat position, the status of the other person is no worse than that of Mr. Travis. Tomoko Gaoliang said. Then who do you think is the person sitting in the middle? Chanyuyan asked again. Probably the real leader of H.C.F, but the identity of this person is really unknown. Because H.C.F is a combination of several organizations, currently known as Sanlian, FBC, and Greyhound, what is hidden behind it should be there are other organizations. After Tomoko Liang finished speaking, he paused again, and continued, in addition, according to the information I have, there may be a family in one of the organizations of HCF. This organization has a high status. Although it is not active now, it will happen in the future. The reason why Schindler can be excluded from the family is because we have only been in this world for a short time, and it is impossible for anyone to have the qualification to enter the family. Then there is Shinya Pharmaceutical, which is also not active now, but they will have equal cooperation with H.C.F in the future, so the possibility of being part of H.C.F can be ruled out. Therefore, I judge that the possibility of Wohlmann Schindler in Shinya is very high, otherwise he would not be so mysterious. Chen Yuyan nodded in satisfaction. It seemed that keeping Tomoko Gaoliang's life was really a good deal. The information she has is indeed their best supplement. After gradually confirming her loyalty, it is also very appropriate to let her participate in the management of a group. Shinya Pharmaceutical, I know this company. It is the largest pharmaceutical company in Yan country, but they don't have any signs of conducting biochemical experiments. Looper said with a frown. I also know about this company, and what I can tell you is that with the strength of Yangguo and Shinya Pharmaceutical, if they really want to get involved in the biochemical weapon industry, then they are definitely more terrifying than Umbrella. There are many opponents. Ghost also looked serious, but now I can also say with certainty that they don't mean that, at least for now. That day won't let you wait too long. Tomoko Gaoliang said lightly. Then what's next? Will Jack Norman lead the Greyhound organization to attack our Atlantic Research Institute? Chen Yuyan asked again. It should be soon, they are preparing. Also, I need to say that H.C.F got the information about Umbrella's attack on the Atlantic Research Institute last time, and knows that you have T-72 tanks on the island, so they will definitely. I have other plans. Tomoko Gaoliang said. What plan? As far as I know, the Greyhound organization is connected with a warlord in Africa through the matchmaking of the Sanlian Company. And this African warlord has taken in several missile experts from the former Soviet Union. They should be able to manufacture long-range missiles. Tomoko Gaoliang said, if they launch missiles directly from West Africa to bomb the Atlantic Research Institute, it will almost certainly cause tragic losses. The Atlantic Research Institute should not have too many underground facilities, right? Gao Liangzi said. He didn't doubt the accuracy of this news at all, because Lin Huo also told him that Murphy's cooperated with others to build the T-virus missile silo in the later plot of Under the Gun 4. After chatting with Murphy's, it proved that this organization is the Greyhound organization, so although the plot has changed now, the resources controlled by the major forces have not changed much. So, the missile that was originally used by Murphy's to blackmail the United States and the Yan Kingdom is now directed at the Atlantic Research Institute. Chen Yuyan turned back and said to Looper, Mother Wolf, you should immediately ask your warlord friend in Africa, General Andrew, to find out who this warlord colluding with the Greyhound organization is. Okay. Looper nodded, then suddenly thought of something, and asked, you mean, burn the war to Africa? General Andrew got the missile, and we got the technology of the missile, why not do it? Chen Yuyan spread his hands and said. Understood, I will make a connection to facilitate this matter. But even so, the price we have to pay is not small. General Andrew is a very realistic person. Looper said. That's how it is. I think I should be able to satisfy his appetite. Chen Yuyan stood up, my time is almost up. I will take Gao Liang's Heise away first, maybe she will come to help us in the future. After finishing speaking, he said to the system in his mind, System. Return to the world of Command and Conquer, and Takako will also be taken away. As soon as the words fell, the two of them turned into white light and disappeared. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. All Heaven's Unlimited Base. Author, Jingda Ren. Chapter 239. 237 Veronica Virus Technology Tree. It has been a month since Chunyuan returned to the world of Command and Conquer. During this month, Chunyuan mainly stayed here, and he didn't have much to do in the world of Resident Evil, so he only went there for 2 days. On the contrary, the last experimenter, Wolman Schindler, has been there several times, and there are 12 days in total. And Chunyuan was as stable as Mount Tai in these 12 days, and he was a little excited. After all, these 12 days were equivalent to Schindler's points to further develop his power. However, just to be on the safe side, he still spent 2 days to arrange his defense. After all, his World of Ruins group has just started. Whether it is to solicit business, build factories, or recruit employees, it will take time. Now several production factories in that world have been running, and the 2 Protector-type robot factories located in the Texas Farm and the Atlantic Research Institute have been producing, maintaining a speed of 1 every 2 hours. This speed is terrifying. A factory can produce 12 Protector-type robots in 1 day. If one sells for $3 million according to Chunyuan's price, that is a huge sum of money. It is worth mentioning that when building products in the Infinite Base factory in the world of Resident Evil, it still consumes the resources accumulated in the world of Command and Conquer. Chunyuan went to see the factories and production lines built by the Infinite Base, and he discovered a pattern. The buildings built by the Infinite Base are divided into 2 categories. One is the fully automatic production line. The interior of this production line has been remodeled by the Infinite Base. The internal structure and how the raw materials enter the factory cannot be seen at all. In short, we can only see that the stock of resources in the base has decreased a little, and after a certain period of time, the products will appear directly outside the factory. For this kind of production line, the buildings obtained from the Infinite Base research technology and the buildings obtained by lottery are all fully automatic. In addition, if the factories that Chunyuan scans with the scanning function are also fully automatic, then it will be the same. The other type is the semi-automatic or manual production line. This kind of production line will not be transformed by the Infinite Base. Basically, it is what is taken out during scanning. This is the case with buildings such as the soilless plant built by Chunyuan. So in the final analysis, the scanning function of the Infinite Base is best used in scanning technology. It's just that although the database of T. Veronica virus was obtained this time, it only added a classification of T. Veronica virus under the umbrella company's technology tree. There is a basic Veronica virus research in it, and the sub-technologies under it include the stronger Liquor Kai technology, and there are 2 hunter-killer technologies, the Hunter Kai and the Sweeper. In addition to the basic T. Veronica virus research, these 2 hunter-killer technologies also need to study the Hunter Beta under the T virus branch before starting research and development. According to the introduction, the hunters should be the hunters with light green eyes and big eyes seen in the Antarctic base before, and the Sweeper is the ultimate version of the hunters. As for their big eyes, it is because they are implanted with automatic monitors. This kind of equipment is implanted in the hunter's brain and connected to the eyes, allowing them to have an IQ no less than that of any alpha parasites, and even more importantly, their vision can be shared with the Red Queen. That is to say, what this kind of hunter sees, Chunyuan can also see it through the screen. However, the disadvantage is that if automatic monitors are used, these hunters lose the possibility of mutation. In other words, on the battlefield, they will not have a chance to be resurrected after being killed by a certain weapon, and they will mutate to resist the function of this weapon. The technology of the automatic monitor has also appeared on the technology of U.M.F-013 Red Queen, which is classified as Umbrella Electronics. In other words, compared with the nemesis parasite, this kind of thing is a more stable and violent choice. In addition to these, there is also a B.O.W called Bandersnatch, which is the kind of monster Chunyuan has seen with a huge arm that can extend more than 10 meters to attack. This kind of monster can only be studied after studying the Tyrant T-002 under the T virus. It seems to be a monster produced by the fusion of the Veronica virus and the Tyrant. Others include sandworms, black widow spiders and other B.O.W technologies. Generally speaking, the technology tree under the T Veronica virus has very little content. It seems that these should be B.O.Ws developed by Alfred Ashford. They are basically very rough. It can be said that except for the two there are no bright spots outside of this kind of hunter. This made Chunyuan a little disappointed. He also hoped that the T Veronica virus could give him some surprises, but it turned out to be like this. But think about it, the creator of the Veronica virus, Wuxia Ashford, froze himself after creating the virus, and just unblocked it not long ago, so naturally he didn't have time to carry out the Veronica virus. The B.O.W design. Thinking of this, Chunyuan felt a little dizzy. Wuxia should still be waiting for him at the Ashford Manor in England, or pull her over to help him with the research on the Veronica virus. This can't work. She is greedy for my body. Wouldn't taking the initiative to find her like throwing yourself into her arms? Although it sounds a bit strange. Now the world of Resident Evil is promoted by Wolman Schindler, and the time has flowed for 12 days. Chunyuan can only check what happened there. There is still a lack of connection between the two worlds. S method. However, in the past 2 days, apart from looking for 4 eyes to calculate the billions of debts, nothing special happened. The development of the A group is progressing steadily, and the Atlantic Institute and the Antarctic base are calm. Spectre's pursuit of Wolman Schindler's traces has never been fruitful, and the Protector robot has now actually played some brand effects. The best friend of Murphy's, the father of the farmer's daughter Carly Lloyd, helped the A group acquire 2 car modification factories, which are specially used to make some modifications to the Protector robot. It is said to be refitting, but it is just changing the painting, adding the logo of A group and so on. As for the repair service, forget about it, even Chunyuan can't repair it himself. We can only build some CE-2 engineering robots and more advanced crab spider engineering robots in the world of Resident Evil in the future, and let these engineering robots repair them. Fortunately, this kind of Protector robot is very solid. Generally speaking, it can't be damaged by any tossing around, unless it is shot with a gun. Looper has been staying in Africa, and Chunyuan also visited her during the 2 days back. Because he has been in Africa for the past few days, Looper's whole body is a little tanned. She had reached an agreement with the African warlord, General Andrew, and to put it bluntly, most of the African warlords knew the truth, and soon found the warlord behind the Greyhound organization. This warlord is active in the Western Sahara region, and his name is Yebuda, and he is quite far away from General Andrew, who is mainly active in Chad. But this is not a hindrance. General Andrew, under the instruction of Rupier, directly told Yebuda to hand over the long-range missile in your hand, otherwise the matter will be brought to the UN. Thank you for the 1000 starting coins rewarded by the Portable Nether team. All Heavens Unlimited Base. Author, Jingda Ren. Chapter 240. 238 Flourishing, Part 1. In fact, the biggest headache for these African countries and warlords must be the United Nations. It's not because I'm afraid, it's because I hate it. Because if they do something and are stabbed to the United Nations, if it goes wrong, there will be no international aid, and what's worse is economic sanctions. Therefore, the Greyhound organization has been preparing for this half a month and has never done anything. The reason is that General Andrew has been stumbling with Yebuda. Anyway, General Andrew was heartbroken and insisted that Yebuda had long-range missiles in his hands. We didn't find evidence or anything, but you have it anyway. If you don't believe me, let the United Nations send an investigation team to investigate. Yabuta is also wronged. Although he does have long-range missiles, he has never taken out this thing. To be exact, the silo hasn't even been built yet. But the problem is that they don't dare to ask the United Nations to investigate. As soon as they investigate, something will happen. So they had no choice but to say that I don't have you to talk nonsense and refuse to accept the battle, while quickly shrinking back and daring not to make any moves. Naturally, the plan to attack the Atlantic Institute was shelved. But they put the plan on hold. It doesn't mean that the Wolf Pack team will let them go. Now, except for the Ghost, who continued to track down the whereabouts of Woolman Schindler, and Hank, who went to the ruins of Raccoon City to scout the situation, the rest of the Wolf Pack team came to General Andrews' base. ZD has been in the middle of a civil war since the 1970s, and it has been fighting for 17 years. The Civil War did not end until the early 1990s, but there are still many factions and warlords in the country. General Andrew is one of the warlords, the son of Abdullahi Dana, the leader of the Volcano Army. The Volcano Army is a very small faction in the north, mainly active in the central Gala province. In order to earn enough bargaining chips in the ZD Reconciliation Conference, those factions in the north even briefly united. The northern factions are supported by France, the United States, Saudi Arabia, and other countries, and these countries are also selling weapons to the northern factions openly and secretly. After the disintegration of the Soviet Union, a large number of weapons from the former Soviet Union were also smuggled over. Rupier happened to know a small arms dealer in France and helped him smuggle weapons from France to the Volcano Army, and then met General Andrew. So every time Chen Yuyan asks Looper to get some weapons and equipment to scan, what she finds are basically former Soviet or French products. With a big wave of his hand, Chen Yuyan provided the Volcanic Army with 20 protector robots, and told him that the light laser guns equipped with these robots only have a range of 50 meters, and their power is so small that they can only cause burns, so they are used to maintain law and order. All right. But even so, General Andrew is like a treasure. In the cities under their control, the biggest problem is the issue of law and order. Moreover, 20 robots are equivalent to a huge sum of $60 million, and they can do whatever they want. Victor has detected that Jack Norman is within Yebuta's control during this time, and they are going to launch a raid directly to kill Jack Norman and make the Greyhound organization leaderless. As a union of several organizations, H.C.F's biggest weakness is that each organization is independent of each other and cannot be twisted into a single rope. As long as an organization is eliminated, their strength will be weakened, and other parts will basically not come to support. Chen Yuyan would not interfere with their actions. After all, the members of the Wolf Pack team are the elite among the elite, so they can still handle such small things. Now the Legion of Ruins in the world of Command and Conquer has also begun to flourish. During this month, Chen Yuyan focused on expanding the production lines of various robots. 50 new worker ant drone factories were built, and the extra 2,000 worker ant drones collected resources almost day and night. And while they were collecting resources, they also cleaned up the ruins all over the place. The number of NS-4 robot factories has also increased to 20. This kind of robot is also the top priority of Chen Yuyan's recent construction plan. As for the crab spider engineering robot, because only finished products were drawn in the lottery at that time, there was no technology, so it could only be built through the third-level manufacturing center, which greatly slowed down the development pace of the current Ruin army. Therefore, Chen Yuyan, a crab spider-shaped engineering robot, only built 20 units. In addition to maintaining the daily loss of tanks and armored vehicles, he began to slowly lay underground power transmission cables at the two key points of the Nuwa base and the Helang base, and improve the Red Queen. The anti-electromagnetic effect of the host. The last time the ion storm came, it directly caused all the Red Queens to crash. In fact, Qinyuan's army of ruins was quite fragile at that time. Without the control of the Red Queen, the actions of those B.O.Ws can only rely on instinct. If Feng Tao hadn't been so supportive at the time and left a reserve team outside the city, the battle might have lasted for a long time, and he might even be forced to rely on him. The powerful strength of the tick tank directly pushes back. In the introduction, the crab spider-shaped engineering robot focused on the function of laying pipelines, so Qinyuan asked these 20 crab spider-shaped engineering robots to transform the underground cables of Nuwa Base and Helang Base, including power transmission cables and data cable. There were originally underground transmission lines between the Helang Base and the 3 villages, and Chi Wei's Helang tribe at that time used these lines to supply power to the villages. But this is a product of decades before the city was destroyed, and the transmission of electricity was very unstable. However, this kind of civilian facilities does not need crab spider robots to play, and it can be completed by the Forest Fire Organization engineering team. Speaking of the engineering team, let's first talk about the integration between the Legion of Ruin and Hammertown. Before, Xingfu Village, Muhi Village, and Beiti Village under the control of the Ruin Legion had a total of about 1,500 people, while Iron Hammer Town had a population of more than 5,000 and 1,000 soldiers. Later, Feng Tao invaded and bombarded Iron Hammer Town, destroying at least one-third of the buildings. Fortunately, most of the houses in Hammer Town are low and the buildings are relatively scattered, otherwise the loss would be even more severe. When evacuating the people to the 3 villages, Qinyuan used the 3rd-level manufacturing plant to continuously produce T-72 main battle tanks, while the 2nd-level production lines of the remaining 2 subsidiary manufacturing stations built 10 apartment buildings in the 3 villages. Come to welcome the people of Hammertown. And because Xingfu village is a residential area remodeled, there are many abandoned houses in it, so it is no problem to temporarily use it as a shelter from wind and rain. Lin Huo also returned to his Baldur's Gate world, and spent points to support a large amount of food, finally overcoming the difficulties. In fact, for experimenters, one of the biggest conveniences is that they can go to their own bound world to obtain supplies. Because the time of these worlds is static relative to the main world, this process is almost equivalent to conjuring things out of thin air. However, all of this is based on points. The reward points are very precious, so Qinyuan, who has quickly established a force of his own with the help of the infinite base, naturally doesn't feel deeply. Just think about it, no matter how strong your personal strength is, it will take a considerable process for you to establish your own power. For the experimenters, in order to be recognized by the system and have a power rating, they first need to spend a lot of points to travel back to the bound world, and use a lot of effort to develop bit by bit. The points that many experimenters get from going through life and death in a world, can raise the influence rating to the 1st level of village level or 2nd level of village and town level, which is very good.